I'm joined today by Pastor Arthur O'Malley. We're sitting in his lovely church, the Eastgate Church in Elderslie, and in around a week, Arthur, you're going to be running a conference. Tell me about what you're looking to achieve and what you want to discuss.
Well, David, it's obviously the conference is called Looking Back, Moving Forward. And I'm trying to just again look back at our history. As someone says, history is significant for any people. You have to know where you came from and where you are today. I feel as if we've lost our historical beginnings and as a church, which obviously go back way beyond the Covenanting period. But I'm going back at the Covenanting period in particular. I think it's a very special moment in this nation's long history, that we made a national covenant with the Lord. And when I look back at these days, when I seen the times they were living in, when I seen the opposition, whether that was coming through the Catholic Church and the Pope, that was making demands upon this nation and breaking free from that, whether it came from Martin Luther to our early church fathers. Until then we've seen then dodgy kings, and sorry for calling them dodgy, but then kings who wanted to try and for Episcopalian legal framework upon us, which gave them the right then to be the head of the church. And Scotland always maintained its position that Jesus and Jesus Christ alone was the Lord of the church. They would never surrender that, to whether it was to the papacy or whether that was to be a king and a government. So,
I remember when they opened a museum of religion in Glasgow. It's in the High Street next to the cathedral. They had, when it first opened, they had an exhibit that said about the Queen being the head of the Church of Scotland, and people said, no, that's wrong, that's a mistake. Right? A lot of people died for this very thing. Don't make that mistake. You're talking about the pressure that's on the nation to forget its past, or sometimes these days to revile our past. Yeah. We're being told to be ashamed of our past. And this undermines people, I think, in a very fundamental way. If you think that your nation is something of which you should be ashamed and uniquely ashamed, because that tends to be the narrative that's being forced on us. And also this falling away from the Christian aspects. This week we see that Tate and Lyle, a famous Scottish brand of entrepreneurs, and are rebranding their product to remove a religious symbol. The symbol being the lion and the bees, which relates to the story of Samson. And that's been rebranded to be something more modern. So again, our Christian heritage is being slowly erased, to the huge detriment of our people, because if you forget who you are, how do you stand for anything? How do you navigate through the future? It becomes a very difficult thing. Yes.
Absolutely, David. And I think when we actually look at this, this is spiritual. It's been a spiritual attack upon our nation for a long time. And probably if we wanted to look back to the 1960s in particular, they called them the swinging 60s, and that was when they really rebelled against the value system which was our Christian heritage. It's just losing, our very nature was Christian to the core. And it set out our value system. It was in education, it was in our health, it was in our law and order. And it basically, our whole nation was galvanized by our history, by our Christian heritage, David, which was very valuable to us. Our fathers and our mothers gave their life for this. They gave their blood. They suffered tremendously, but they thought there was something worth fighting for. And we thank God that they were victorious, that although there was much blood, they say something like 18,000 might have gave their lives coming off the back of the killing time. So they say a 50-year period, whether that was from 1938 to 1638 to 1688. But there was an awful lot of people who were prepared to die to retain our Christian values and our Christian heritage. And today, like yourself, David, it really bothers me when I see just how we have just dropped our heritage as if it doesn't matter. And as you say, this wokeism that we see today is trying to demonize our past and demonize our history, and to our shame.
Yes, I mean the idea, this is putting in a substitute religion, an alternative religion to Christianity. And when you dig into the people who generated the ideas that we now know as woke ideology, they were quite upfront about it, that Christianity has to be replaced with their version of a worldview, cultural Marxist worldview. And it cannot survive, it cannot succeed unless Christianity is overthrown. So it's been an attack. You mentioned the 60s. It was very interesting. I was looking at church attendance in Scotland, and it was very, very healthy till 1965, and it went off a cliff in 1965, and really hasn't shown any sign of reversing that decline since. And this is from a point where there was certainly an air of revival and of life about the church in Scotland, certainly through the 50s and early 60s. When Billy Graham came to Scotland, he was packing stadiums. There was a huge interest, and that's no longer the case, or not at the moment. And we've seen also within the church a terrible lukewarm nature. It's neither one thing nor the other. No. It's neither hot nor cold. We saw it over COVID. I saw one pastor also that I've interviewed, I know you know him, John William Noble in Aberdeen, railing against the conduct of the church during COVID, because they behaved like Nicola Sturgeon was the head of the church in Scotland. And he's saying, no, Jesus Christ is the head of the church of Scotland. And he says we should not be afraid. He says we should meet and worship God. He says we should help one another. He doesn't say we should go and hide in our homes because the state says so. And he doesn't say that we should close our churches and not meet in worship of God because the state says so. And he couldn't, I think he found it really difficult to comprehend that the churches would be so weak as to do this. And even those churches that resisted, that continued to meet, and heard this in Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, were having members of the congregation shop them to the authorities for meeting to worship God, which is a terrible, shameful mark on our nation. And all of this has generated an atmosphere where there is a weakness about Christianity that is entirely the opposite of what the apostles showed, of what Christ showed, which was fearlessness. Do what you like, this is the truth, and we're going to proclaim the truth. And whatever you do, we're going to proclaim the truth. That kind of gallantry, that courage, seems to be in short supply. I mean, do you see this too?
Yes, yes, David. Obviously, I was one of the churches that rebelled, and we opened up our doors. I see this was like a Jezebel spirit manifested in the form of a Nicola Sturgeon, and who was literally warring against the church, who decreed that she would dictate to the churches. And to my horror and shame, I couldn't believe the number of churches that swallowed that narrative and decided to close their doors, were very compliant and to her wishes. And I seen COVID as a great chance for the church to rise up, to find its voice. I thought this was a great platform. If we'd have stood together and unified ourselves, that we could have stood up and made declaration that the church will be opened, and we, in a time of great crisis, it could have been an opportunity for people to have came into the church and sought prayer, and we could have really been a rallying voice as we were during the Second World War, when people turned to the church in droves because of fear and intimidation. And so it was a lost opportunity for the church, and I think, again, I was seeing Nicola Sturgeon, a manifestation of a Jezebel spirit. We know what happened in the Jezebel spirit. She came in and she sought to destroy the prophets of God. That was the first thing she did. She came in to destroy the religion of the day, and she flooded the nation with false prophets. And I see today that with secularism and humanism. A number of people now that's getting married, it's humanists that are now doing the weddings, humanists that are doing the burials, and now they're actually moved into the naming ceremonies, and everything is galvanized to destroy the church, the foundation of the church. And unfortunately, the church has sat back for far too long, and we've given them the high ground, David. I think it's time for us to take that ground back. It's time for us to rise up, find our voice, and again find an anointing from God as we go back out and reclaim this nation, which belongs to God.
So the conference, which is on the 2nd of March, specifically, where do you see that as fitting into a reawakening of the church and of the faith in Scotland? Where do you see the conference as, or what role do you see the conference as having, or what do you expect and hope to get from it?
It's a really good question, David. It's when you put a conference on, to me, I'm looking more just for this to be a conference. I think I'd shared earlier that this could be a Jenny Geddes throwing of the stool, which was the spark in 1637, which actually led to an uprising of righteousness, which led to the national signing of the covenant. I'm unsure exactly how where we will go with this, but to me, I just feel as if something needs to be done. If we don't rise up and do something at this moment in time, we're dead. We're already a very poor mark to where we once were. Our standards now are so low. Our voice has become totally and utterly insignificant. And even within the church, David, the rot is so deplorable when we see the Church of Scotland and its falling values to the point where they're adopting a lot of principles of gay sex marriage, and they're endorsing things that would never have ever been endorsed. So I see the conferences, maybe it could be potentially, I am thinking this could be a catalyst moment that that could come a godly uprising within the nation. I'm not too sure what that looks like, David. It's not quite storming the Edinburgh, but I still feel as if something needs to be done, David. And maybe this is for such a time as this moment. And I'm going to leave the rest with the Lord. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I understand exactly what you were saying about COVID being a missed opportunity. I was seeing exactly the same. We were finding, simply speaking the truth about what was happening was gathering, in a journalistic sense, a lot of interest, a lot of support. And that's without then adding the much more weighty matters of what it means in order to be human, and what it means in order to live your life without fear. And it seemed to me also that this was a golden opportunity for the church to say, yes, see all the fear, see all of the panic, yes, that's what the world does. We are not the world. We're the church. We do things differently. We'll tell you why. And they didn't do so. They, for the most part, with noticeable exceptions, yourself, John William Noble, and many others aside, but for the most part, there was cravenness, and it was dreadful. There's one of two strange aspects to COVID. One was the so-called radical left buying every state restriction on liberty, and endorsing them wholeheartedly. So they were shown to be the hypocrites that they are. And the other one, sadly, was the church just being posted missing.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the last time that happens. So Pastor Arthur, I wish you every success. I'll be joining you on the 2nd to listen to what's said, and I wish you every success with the conference. And perhaps we can have a chat after it's over and you've had a chance to digest what was said, and you can let us know what's moved forward and what maybe seems a little different on the far side of the 2nd of March.
Yeah, well, David, do you know, I love some of those wonderful biblical characters, and I could see this as a David and Goliath moment. I see we've seen that Goliath for 40 days terrorised and held the field. Morning and night he came out and he ridiculed the armies of Israel. He terrorised them, and to the point where they were utterly defeated in the morning, they were defeated at night. And this comes off the back of COVID wonderfully, because that's exactly what took place: fear and intimidation. But even today, I just see these monsters of secularism and humanism, which has then made us insignificant and telling us to keep our mouths closed. I believe that what God is looking for today is, this could be a David and Goliath moment, where the Lord wants to raise up Davids today. People who will challenge the status quo, who will rise up against this secularized, humanized world in which we live in, and we can hear the voice of God again. How dare you defy the armies of God? And so I'm praying that this will be one of those moments, David, where, you know, Goliath's days are numbered, and we will see the church again arising and finding its place again where it's always should have been, was at the very centre of our communities, of our societies, and our voice needs to be heard again, David. So yes, I'm hoping that this conference will be one of those sparks, one of those, shall we say, Jenny Geddes stools. But I'm really believing that God is wanting to do something. I've always felt that. God does unfinished business with Scotland, David, and God wants to do something in this nation. But God is looking for a people who will galvanise themselves, will come together in unity and with one common purpose, that God will be glorified again in the land of Scotland, because this nation belongs to God, and God is wanting to take authority again in our nation. And it's up to us, the people. We have got a part to play. So I'm hoping that many people who have that spirit again will come again, gather together, and we will not only retrace our history, but then we can have some good discussions of how do we move forward, because it is a moving forward.
Arthur, thank you very much, and anyone who wants to join Arthur on March the 2nd, Saturday, March the 2nd, if you go to your website address? eastgatechurch.co.uk, and if you do /moving forward, you'll find a link to a form you can fill out, and you can book your place. I'm believing this would be an historic day, David, and I'm not going to be discouraged if I've only got a small, because I was just reading again recently there, Gideon, when God says there's too many of you. God always tends to work through a remnant, and so if you feel you're part of a remnant, when people ask me what denomination covers you, I used to be with the Assemblies of God. In 2015 we became independent, and now I say I belong to the remnant church. And so if you feel a bit of a remnant, I say remnant as opposed to rebel, but I always feel as if I've been a little bit rebellious, especially when it came to COVID and other places. Then come and come and join with us, and you'll be very welcome. And come and let us just see what God is going to do on that day. Amen. Arthur, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.